Hey NFL fans, so we actually got to sit in on a press conference today and we were listening to people discuss the NFL experience for the fans coming into the future. So what was fun is they had representatives from FanDuel, they had Genius Sports, NFL, so a bunch of different reps from a bunch of different areas, and they were talking about the experience that is to come for an NFL player. You know, is it more broadcast? They mentioned the success they had with Peacock this year in doing its exclusive game, the success that they had doing the Toy Story broadcast with Disney Plus and never doing something like that, being able to open new doors to the NFL experience in different ways. They also talked about more of the gambling side with FanDuel and Genius Sports, talking about BetVision, talking about ways that they can enhance the experience of a gambler on an NFL game and be able to further that experience to a positive way as well. And what was really cool is they did have a whole discussion about AI and how they're integrating that. You know, like you have NextGen stats with Amazon that they're trying to put in more of into the games, and you have, you know, AI coming into betting a little bit more. And it was just interesting to hear them talk about how AI is affecting the game and how AI is impacting the experience. Referencing again the Toy Story thing where they did the toys were the players, so AI kind of had to get involved with that and do some different things. So it was a cool press conference. You can watch the whole conference right here. This is just kind of a highlight at the beginning. It's a little bit long, it's like a half hour, so I just wanted to do this at the beginning of it, tell you what to expect, what my input was, and then so you can hear what they were all talking about. So you stay here and listen to the press conference, jump through to a couple of different parts, but it was really fun. It was very interesting. They're definitely committed to new experiences for the fan, definitely working on brand new things to bring to the NFL games, whether that be Nickelodeon, Disney Plus, whether that be on the betting side, whether that be on Amazon Prime, you know, however they do the expansions that they're looking to do and to further the experience for the fans. So listen to the press conference. It was very interesting. It's like a half hour, but it was very interesting to hear what they had to say. Listen to the representatives talk about making sure that they're getting the right fan experience and how they're reaching out to try and engage more fans.
First, but we'll have Steve come out first. Steve Bornstein's the president of North America at Genius Sports and the former CEO of the NFL Network and ESPN. Steve, he also has the best voice of anyone that I've ever met. You want to come out here and hang out with me, Steve? Maybe. He's running honors tonight. He's like, I don't mean to be the stickler for time, but I have my one job tonight. It is NFL honors. Okay, come.
Should I come out?
Yeah, yes. She would, yeah. You know, you can sit wherever you want. You take that one, yeah. Okay, next up we have Christian Janetsky, who's the president of FanDuel Group, which is a very important part of this whole thing. You want to come on, Christian? Perfect. And then we have my boss, so tell him nice things about me, Hans Schroeder, who's the EVP of Media Distribution at the NFL. Hans, we just figured out I'd known him for 15 years. And then we have Andrew Hawkins. He's the co-founder of Status Pro. He's a former NFL wide receiver. He's my former coworker. He left us for ESPN, but as we know, that's okay, I guess. Okay, well, I'm glad to have all of you here. My name is Cynthia Freeland, by the way. I work at the NFL Network. Technically, my title is a predictive analytics expert. It's too hard to say analytics analyst, so therefore I got a nice little promotion kind of right when I started. So great to have you all here. Steve, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Start with you. So did you know that 94 of the top 100 broadcasts in 2023 were NFL broadcasts? Yeah?
What were the 6 that weren't?
You know what? They didn't give me that amount. So probably like an award show, probably actually NFL honors. I don't think they count as that was one of them. I'm pretty sure you can quote me on that. But look, we've been talking about, you're the longest tenured person here. We're talking about all the different ways that we've been watching We even have it for the Super Bowl with the slime cast and all of these different ways of experiencing it, including really advanced graphics, and obviously Amazon, they've done a really good job of figuring out, on the Thursday night broadcast, how to incorporate next-gen stats. Status Pro, of course, has an incredible back-end solution that's empowering all of this. How do you see, what's going to happen next? Read it, give me the crystal ball into the future.
Wow, that was it's inevitable that 100 of the top 100 shows are going to be NFL games in the next 3 years. So
99, one will be NFL honors.
Well, I call that an NFL show. And by the way, it was 93 out of the 100 were NFL games, and one of them was the first show after the Super Bowl last year. So that's the power of the NFL, and it's just inevitable in this fragmenting audience that media is competing in today, that sports will continue to be the sequoia among all the other trees out there. So to me, this is not actually that revolutionary. We predicted it literally in 1987. You said it kindly, saying I'm the oldest guy up here. You said something like
no, I said you had the most experience.
Yeah, well, I am the oldest, but in 1987, Cap Cities bought ESPN, and network share at that time was a little over 92% between 3 networks, not 4 networks. That was 1987. Except when you dug a little deeper and you looked at network share in HBO households, it was 50%. So it was doing 93% with households that didn't have HBO. It was doing 50% with people that did have HBO. And that, to me, is what you're seeing in 2024, and you'll see it in 2025. The continued fragmenting of audience, ability to gather large audiences, and that sports will continue to be the beacon that changes all that defies all that, I should say.
Hans, you negotiate these deals. What do you think that, other than your great negotiating skills, what are some of the other ways that the NFL keeps its enduring dominance going on? What are we actually seeing here?
Well, I think it's pretty easy. I think it's a combination and confluence of 2 things. The game has never been stronger. You think about the number of stars. We had 70% of our games going to the 4th quarter within 1 score. We could go on and on about that, but the game has been incredibly strong, and our model really works. All our games are on broadcast television, at least in over-the-air markets. 90% of the games are on nationally on broadcast, which still has an incredible reach, but that's been something, and going back to when Steve was my boss, we started on a path 15 years ago, back expanding our presence on digital. Wasn't that insightful even then at the time the future was going to change. We had a meeting with Steve Jobs probably back in 2008, where he held up his phone and he said, I don't think anybody in this room understands how much this is going to change every aspect of your life, including your games. And so what we focused on is continuing to build out that distribution on digital platforms, through ancillary productions. And I go back to this year, we were up 7% for the regular season. But the more interesting thing was we were up on every single demo P2+. In television, in a world where television is shrinking, we're up in 2 to 11, we're up in 12 to 17, we're up on up through over 55. And so, I think that's a combination of us having a great game and great product, wide distribution, and a real push that Roger has, that Steve had, that has stayed as a legacy to us, is to continue to innovate and evolve, never become. Don't forget Taylor Swift. Well, look, Chiefs were phenomenal, or Swifties, whatever. The Chiefs played 16 and 272 games. I think we can acknowledge there was a real impact there, but there were a lot of other great things going on in the NFL this year. But the interesting thing, tying it back to this conversation, is how you grow and how you try and continue the innovation point. And Steve would always say something, I'll sort of sanitize it for this group based on how he typically would have delivered it. But he had a saying for us that...
I can bleep you out.
We don't have to be right. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have to be first, but let's try to be right. And I think that's really been a shaping factor for how we think about these things in a very targeted way. And I think the trick to us as we start thinking about these new experiences is, again, have a combination of a few things. A specific purpose that's going to appeal to a specific demographic and part of our viewing base. not everything's going to be wide. The broadcasters already covered that. The main production is excellent for the majority of people watching at home. How can we take all these different tools? How can we take the additional platforms? How can we take the additional data and the experiences that unlocks and create new experiences targeted to specific parts of our fan base that are new ways we can present the game? And I think we've taken some really meaningful steps forward. Toy Story with Nickelodeon, but we're still scratching the surface with Prime Vision. And so I want to hear the rest of this group's view, but for us, I think that's how we do it. We're always evolving, we have a great model, and we have a great game.
Well, we're sitting in like a very beautiful hotel in a very amazing city that has a lot to do with, you know, an aspect that perhaps is a little bit more in FanDuel's wheelhouse. So how do you see sort of the evolution of what FanDuel's been able to do in targeting consumers in their home with their handheld device? What do you see with all of that in terms of like how that integrates with the broadcast and how that's kind of, you know, what does that do for you, for your side of the business, especially given that, you know, we're sitting here in a Genius Sports Thing and they have, what, Second Spectrum, which won a whole bunch of broadcast awards that provides you the technology to be able to empower this?
Sure. Well, so one of the interesting things we did together with Genius this year is we launched BetVision, and we've had it for the NFL playoffs this year. So if you think about it, if you're a bettor at home, most people, you know, probably everybody up here watches NFL games on a big screen TV. It's sort of the optimal viewing experience. But if you're a bettor trying to live bet during a game, you're typically going to be, depending on which type of feed you have, you're going to be a play behind, you might be 2 plays behind. So it's kind of a frustrating experience unless you're waiting for a break, you know, to change over in possession or, you know, a quarter or halftime break. But with BetVision, you're streaming the game within your app. There's also a bunch of rich layer of detail with it where we can layer on bets, we can suggest bets based on what's happening in the game. But it gives you the ability, you're there to play by play. And so, you know, the NFL traditionally for us over-indexes on pregame bets. And part of that is the NFL is you know, you're driving towards Thursday and Sunday and Monday, so the narrative's built all week. There's a kind of a cadence to it where you're, you know, you certainly see that sort of at its largest, obviously this week, you know, last week and this week.
And pregame shows are awesome.
Pregame shows are amazing,
Especially game day morning.
building that excitement. And so, but in play betting is still about a quarter of the handle on the NFL, and we think there's a real ability to grow that, and BetVision is one of the things that we're looking at banking on by just improving the user experience for those who do want to, you know, be right there throughout the game.
Okay, Hawk, how does this all feel as a former player, someone who is very active in the media, someone who co-founded a tech play that's, you know, virtual reality, augmented reality? How does this all sort of, how do you kind of see this through your lens, like your actual lens, not the lens of, you know, the screen, not the VR lens?
I would say the thing that the NFL has done incredible, and will there continue to be the leader, is finding more and more ways for people to engage with the sport, right? To your point, I've done a lot around football, the game of football with the NFL, but it started as a fan, and that went into playing, and that goes into media, and that goes into finding other ways for the new generation to engage. So what we do at Status Pro is we make NFL football through a virtual reality lens. For us, it was removing the last layer of access for fans, because fans, no matter what, have never felt what it feels like to be on the field. As a player, that's something I understood, and it was like, well, how do we now create another way for the generation to engage and say, wow, this is what it's like to throw a winning touchdown, or run for a first down, or hear the crowd go wild. And to Hans's point, I mean, the NFL knows their demographic better than anybody. And with the Toy Story broadcast and what they do with NFL films, it's creating fandom in brand new ways. For us, we have over 1 million users, so that's 1 million people now experiencing NFL football a way that was never possible before. It plays into what Hans is talking about, and Steve and Christian, and that's why, as you look to the future, there's going to be more and more ways in the generation. I have an 11-year-old son, as you know, Cynthia. He lives and breathes NFL football, and the way he engages with it is completely different than I ever have. But the fandom and the passion and his affinity for the stakes that are involved are just as high, and that's where the opportunity is.
Can you give us your son's a really good example of kind of what a lot of that younger demographic, like, how does he engage with it? Like, what are you watching?
I mean, video games, like the majority of his time is spent playing Madden, NFL Pro Era, or watching other people talk about the NFL on YouTube. He's the kind of person like bite-sized, TikTok. He cares about the fashion. He cares that Taylor Swift is at the games. He cares about what the players are wearing, how they're joking, how they're interacting, and swapping jerseys. And it's not typical for our generation who is used to just saying, okay, here's the NFL, we go to ESPN. He's on social media, he's watching other creators talk about the NFL, and for that generation, yes, it's more bite-sized, but again, it doesn't mean that their passion or their appetite for NFL is any different or any less. It's just different than what we're used to.
I love that. Speaking of that's a great way to segue to the next question, which is, what do you think this year, like maybe you can all just give me an example, Steve, I'll make you start because you're at my left and that just makes the most sense to me. A breakthrough achievement this season in terms of NFL content or fan engagement. If you had to say like one thing that this year, 2023, obviously it's 24 now, but has kind of you've seen this season.
Well, I'll let Christian talk to it. He did talk about, the bet vision to me is the future, where you make this, where the latency between what you see on television and what you can do in interactive engagement becomes one and the same. And to me, that once you make it easier, gambling existed before the Supreme Court made it legal in this country, and all we're doing now is making it more fun and more compatible for people to engage with content that they want to engage with in an interactive fashion. And to me, that's the future of consumption.
I think on the sports betting side, we think there's a lot of headroom for the NFL for users to engage in betting on the NFL the way they do on some other sports. Again, once you improve the latency issues, we see the NFL's gravitated. There's still people love their teams in the NFL, so you're going to have more team side bets in the NFL than you're going to have in other sports. But player propositions are becoming more and more popular in the way they have been with other sports. But what you see is a lot of that bet pre-game, and then when you get into the game, people tend to bet more on, are the Ravens going to come back on the Chiefs now or not, and less so on who's going to score a touchdown in the third quarter or the fourth quarter. But I think we're trying to, we introduced something called the Pulse this year, which is a place within our sports betting app that during the game, we have people in real time kind of building off narratives in the game, right? So if Patrick Mahomes is down 10 points, he has 8 fourth quarter comebacks down by 10 points or more in his career, do you want to bet on Mahomes to make a comeback? So it's sort of a packaged bet that makes it a little easier real time rather than scrolling through all the available options.
Just to be clear, so do you tell people that Patrick Mahomes stat, or are you just putting the bet up and hoping they know?
No, we're a big believer in sharing transparently insights that we think are interesting to our users. There's a price on every bet, and that price is visible, but arming users with information in real time in a more interesting way, right? So they're thinking, I'm watching this game, I wonder if the Chiefs come back, and we can present 3 or 4 narratives that are, again, built into the real story of the game, that kind of narrative. We think it's more interesting and engaging for fans.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Of the 2 teams that are playing, which fan base is more active in betting? The Niners or the Chiefs?
Well, on legal regulated sites,
yes, it's legal regulated.
It's definitely
going to be illegal. I don't know what that means.
It's going to be the Chiefs because FanDuel's available in Kansas and not available in California. So that's an
fair point. Yeah.
But I can also say that upwards of 80-something% of FanDuel customers are also backing the Chiefs this week. So that's a pretty clear favorite.
By volume or by handle?
Both.
Interesting. I see. Okay. The content question. We'll get off the betting question because you and I work for the Shield.
Somebody on the stage used to yell at me if I had more than 3 thoughts on a slide for a long time, so my mind naturally goes to 3 distinct points. The first, I think it's hard to, in an evolving media landscape, not speak to what we did with the Peacock game. The fact that year over year you had an audience that beat broadcast in the same window is a testament. The experience was great, the quality of it was great, and the audience, especially if you layer on what the real number was, probably closer to 26 million with first-party data involved with that. That's a remarkable accomplishment. Comcast, Peacock deserve all the credit in the world. But also they drove a platform, which is what the NFL can do. It was the #1 downloaded app in the App Store. It was the #1 Google search term. And so our ability to do that and use and continue to drive consumption on new platforms, I think was pretty interesting. And the results for that game were pretty eye-opening. I think, secondly, what we did on Toy Story, and this is an interesting, different example because we got onto a platform where the NFL's not on before. We had games on Peacock, just not exclusive games. This is really the first live sports we streamed on, and Disney streamed on Disney Plus, and it was, you know, a resounding success. We had a high six-figure streaming number. We were in over 95 countries around the world. The content was up for a week because if anybody's kids, like my 4-year-old daughter, she wants to watch Frozen every day. You know, the whole idea, kids are going to consume differently, and hopefully we're creating an event there and a viewing experience that's just different. And so, to me, thinking about how we learned and grew and reached into a new platform and hopefully a new area and new fan development was key. And then thirdly, what was really interesting was what we did with Prime Vision and Amazon and Second Spectrum, and the ability to pre-identify whether it's a blitzer, whether it's open receivers, and start to take elements of how you tell the main game better for fans that want to see that and want to understand that. You know, some people would say there hasn't been a major production invention since the 1st and 10 line. Now, to me, you're starting to see some of those pieces come to life in a really value-added way that makes the game a lot more interesting to watch. And if you didn't watch, they did it in the Prime Vision experience for most of the year, and then the last game or two on TNF in the main broadcast, they started to use a couple of those elements into the main broadcast to try to tell the story of the game differently. So, to me, each of those things are unique and different in their own way, and they speak to the platforms overall, that reach we can have on digital, how do we target younger fans, and then how do we tell the stories about the game better, with data being key to all of those is really interesting.
I think it's also worth noting, if people didn't remember, that Peacock game was also a Chiefs game, which is a huge and very avid fan base. So I just thought that was an interesting point there too.
Yeah, I think that's what Han said. I think is fans have even a better understanding, and that's the beauty of the game of football, is for as long as you're a fan, as long as you're a player, as long as you're a media member, as long as you work for the league, there's always more that you're learning about the game, and that's what makes it the most beautiful game on earth, because it's a collection of 22 people have to come together, and there are so many intricacies that make the final product what it is. But in those, like whether it's a kid watching a Toy Story broadcast or Prime Vision, the person who's already an NFL fan is understanding even more than they did previously, and what that does is it deepens your connection to the game. And so, for what we've done,
to get in there, to still give somebody the chance to interact and engage, and that's really where the incremental opportunities for consumption and engagement are, by meeting that fan expectation that there's new experiences to do within the game, but it's a small target, and so the work those teams did to sort of hit that target, I think was a really significant development. To get that out now widely into the marketplace has been great in year one. Can't wait to see it in year two.
I also think, I mean, look, I'm going to answer this question to you even though I asked it. I think some of the stuff we've been able to do with the graphics around NextGen stats and the way that they've been integrated into all the different broadcasts in very interesting and unique ways, like, has been really special. Genius has done that in certain ways too. So I think that's just going to help fans even more understand what it is they're looking at when they're looking at a ton of different perspectives. I'm very proud of the stuff that we've done around NextGen stats just in general. So I think that's going to be kind of the future.
And that's been great to see the evolution. For many years it was like the Olympic stat, right? It was how fast somebody ran.
Right.
Not that interesting over time. But you start to see the game this year in the championships where Mahomes held the ball for close to 10 seconds before he released it. Just to see how long that is, feel how long that is, and then comparability with Joe Burrow that's getting the ball out in 2.1 seconds. Like, it just, to Hawk's point, you just start to learn and see the game differently and appreciate it differently.
I mean, you tell stories about this game, right, that could be tied into what people could potentially, I mean, we sort of, we make mention of these things on our air, where we're saying something like, perhaps the Niners, it's interesting that the Niners have the most yards after the catch and most yards after the catch over expected in the league, and perhaps that does, dovetails into a Christian McCaffrey longest rush yard, or what, longest completion. These are the types of things, we'll let you come to your own conclusions on the NFL Network, but in areas like that, it's more interesting.
I think it's what's been really interesting to see, just as a sports fan myself over the years, is how much more sophisticated the conversation's gotten and the comfort level with analytics. And you think about the Lions game.
Lions?
Where they were, the Lions Tampa Bay game, right? And the Lions were up 8 and Tampa scored. And 25 years of watching football, you trot out there and you kick the extra point, and it's the game's sitting on 7, which happened to be the closing line of that game. But the Bucks went for 2, and there was a quick discussion about why the math tells you that you're slightly increasing your chances to win by doing that. And I think, you know, for the NFL and betting, there are these magic numbers, 3, 7, because of the sort of traditional way that people have scored points, teams have scored points in the NFL. And the analytics has driven a change in that, where you have teams going for 2, you have teams going on 4th down. Those things affect where the totals are set. And so, you know, for a sports book like us, we have models that, you know, go into all these things, and you have to incorporate the different way the game's being played into those models.
How close do you think, and do you think it's a viable thing to measuring momentum? Because I actually think that there's an interesting example in the Detroit game against the Tampa. It's more interesting than the San Francisco game. And it's like baseball, right? They were out there with Moneyball forever. They're going to change that too. It's come back a little bit. You see more steals. You see some sort of having on the game differently. But like Campbell's points were all interesting. He was true to himself. But he had 3 different decisions he could have made in the last part of that game, any one of which, it seemed like it was all by the book, no emotion, no momentum, no other factor other than the pure analytics. It's an interesting question for you guys. Do you factor that in? Should you factor it in?
Yeah, I think, you know, we start to offer the number of markets that we offer, right? We're starting with models, right? So that are built off of last season's data, our projections about this season's data, and then as you proceed through the season, you know, there's a cumulative effect. Like you'll hear people talk about, you know, a lot of people are like, how is Patrick Mahomes an underdog? How is that possible? Well, the models would have had San Francisco as a 4 or 5 point favorite a couple of weeks ago. But the recency bias that we have to account for is that Patrick Mahomes never loses an underdog. Why is he an underdog? So the spread is 2.5 or 2, you know, where it is. So I think recency bias is probably a synonym for momentum in this case. So you do see those sort of things. And then we have the models, but we have human beings who trade, because if you're watching a game and if Pacheco goes out in the second quarter, the model doesn't know that he's just limped off and he's in the blue 10. Our human traders have to understand that that's going to impact Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's over rushing yards for the second half and those sorts of things. So there's always going to be a human element to this. Yeah, we definitely have to take those sorts of things into account.
I don't know if you know this, but I believe there's no one on TV in the history of TV that said the words "my model" more than me. So it's, you know, my model says it's kind of a thing. But that actually leads me into AI, specifically what we've been learning about, you know, artificial intelligence. How does that sort of play? It's kind of what you're talking about, you know, recency bias, kind of what happens with the human traders versus not. How does AI sort of factor into all of this?
I think for us, we're not remotely there yet. I knew we were going to have AI on the panel, so I asked ChatGPT what the impact would be, and then
What did they say?
the robots think it's going to be viewer experience and operational efficiency. So if you're in production, it seems like bad news according to ChatGPT. But for us, I think we still have a long way to go. Now, when you log into our sports book, if you are someone who loves tennis and likes to bet on tennis and you like Formula One, if it's Saturday morning, you're going to see, in October, you're going to see college football. You're going to see the Alabama-Tennessee game at the top or something like that. We're really appealing to sort of what the majority we think will be interested in. And so in the same way, you know, when you're shopping on Amazon, you're going to see something that is much more personalized to your experience. I think sportsbooks have a long way to go on personalization, and maybe machine learning or AI plays into that. But I think I touched on earlier that the thing where I think it would be really powerful is in giving users insights, right? So the Lions are up 24-7 at halftime. How many times does a team come back and cover a 7-point spread?
Dagger.
Right? So, you know, yeah, our COO is a long-suffering Detroit fan, so FanDuel is on.
We can commiserate.
So, you know, feeding our users those sorts of insights, and there may be a rule that it's on tap, we're not there yet, but you can see that AI, and I think one of the challenges will be you get access to so much information, then how do you synthesize that and make it accessible and usable in real time?
How do you do that? How do you guys use AI? Because, Status Pro has to.
I mean, we do our content, what we're able to do is, again, it kind of all goes back to fan engagement for us and how people want to engage with the game. So, you know, for example, we played with voice AI, and the ability for coaches as you're getting plays to be dynamic, or wide receivers as we're trying to democratize what it's like to be an NFL player in our experience. Well, as a wide receiver, I can tell you something. If you're the quarterback and you might be having a great game, the Detroit Lions might be winning. It might be the end of the third quarter. You might have 300 yards passing, but you have to pass me the ball. Well, I have a certain spirit towards you in the huddle, and we might not feel like the best of friends. Right. So what AI allows is, okay, well, here is the scenario, and based on that, we can put AI in this player, a brain in this player to say, man, I have not touched a football game, I'm your number one receiver. If you don't give me some love, you have issues in your huddle, right? That is the experience that it's going to be hard for a model to see or what you're going to see on the broadcast. But as a player, I can promise you, Andy Dalton got an earful every time we were in the fourth quarter, and I didn't have the proper amount of screen passes thrown to me.
Now I know what I heard every time out in the third quarter.
Exactly.
They couldn't play.
And that's how I ended up being a Cleveland Brown. But that's how we use AI to allow the fan to have more and more ways to feel like they're embedded in the NFL game.
Okay, Steve, you are, again, your experience. If I'm coming to you as a mentor asking, or a mentee asking you this question, what should I be looking at in terms of AI, Steve, with all of your knowledge, everything you've done, what you've seen from a leadership standpoint? What's the crystal ball there?
No, I think AI in sports is happening today. I mean, it happened years ago. We used to call it big data, manipulation of big data, and Hans is well aware that we spent a lot of time in NFL figuring out, to your point, should you go on fourth down or shouldn't you go on fourth down? That has changed, frankly, because, for lack of a better term, AI has been deployed. And all I can tell you is that, to me, as we come up with these tools and we make better production experiences for our fans, the engagement of it is going to increase, which is ultimately how AI will be a positive impact on this. But to me, it's data manipulation and what you do with that data to make more informed, better decisions, and that to me, we'll see that develop.
How are we planning on that? What are we doing?
Well,
What's going on?
For me, is the NFL.
Yes.
I think it steps into a handful of buckets. It starts on the competitive side, where it's sort of giving you the parameters of trying to keep a level playing field. To Steve's point, you can't stop it. So how do you participate in it, but one that is a competitive, fair way? How do we think about outside of the game? How does it affect our broadcast? You hit on a few of them. I think the prime vision elements that we're doing already hit on a few of those. I think it could affect how games are called. The Hawks sort of talk about that, the coach, or heck, if we're going to do 4 different broadcasts of Sunday Night Football, you get one real Tirico and 3 other AI-created Tiricos announcing the game. As we think about promotion and customization and tailored content, all those opportunities are afforded. So, I don't think we really know what the actual hits are yet. It's still so early to me. And so again, I go back into the phrase earlier that the focus is, we don't have to be the first with all these things, but let's try to be right with how it gets deployed. And I think that's the work we're doing today across our entire business and what that looks like and what the opportunities are.
So to me, given my background with big data or whatever, it's, whatever you train your model on, and whatever model that is how you're gonna have your insights. If I'm a coach on the field and I train my data based on a Kyle Shanahan type offense, then it's gonna look different than if I trained my data based on an Andy Reid type of offense, right? Andy Reid spreads things out, Kyle Shanahan keeps things pretty compressed. That's very broad strokes, kind of what it is. So when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about Genius Sports and what's been happening in the 2023 season behind the scenes, kind of what has Genius been doing? What's going on back there, sir?
What have we been doing?
Well, like this
We've
past
come out
year.
with new products. I mean, the Edge is going to be something that I think that people are going to deploy and like. That vision to me is at the cutting edge of where the experience has to be compatible. But the thing to me is that we have to come up with consumer propositions that the consumer wants. And it's clear to me that interactive gambling and interactive betting is something that they like and enjoy, and we're going to make that experience easier for them.
And I said, for us, the other areas that are really interesting one is the schedule. And the NFL schedule is an incredibly complex project. We have an absolute genius who leads it all, and a guy named Mike North, who is just really a savant. He said something the other day in one of our scheduling meetings. Because we're leading into this, and before the schedule was very manual, it was very human driven. We want these matchups on Sunday night, these on
There was a
Sunday
closet.
afternoon. And so Mike's really leaned in advance in a lot of the work we're now doing with AWS to drive the schedule process. But his point was computers can make you look very, very smart, but they can also be very, very dumb. Because a lot of times, if what they're doing is doing the things you tell them to do. So if you're not asking them to do the right things, then they're going to be limited in what they can actually tell you. But that's where the intersection with AI and adaptive learning and evolving not just the initial things you ask those computers to do, but how they evolve off that. That's really the interesting opportunity to merge those two things to get the maximum benefit of how they make you look really smart and how you don't ask them to do too many dumb things and get to that middle ground.
Love it. Okay, what have you seen specifically this year in terms of like growth and how like this intersection of all of these things have been evolving? And look, like your experience is really cool because you're both on the broadcast side, you're a former player, and you're also, I mean, with everything you're doing in tech and like the licenses that you have, like you could go get certain players' voices. That's wild.
Exactly. I think you nailed it. It's like what Genius Sports has helped us do is to find these specific NFL fans who are maybe at the lower end of the funnel and ready to experience it in a different way. This is where all this comes together. It does become more content essentially, and you know, to Hans's point in broadcast, in our game, I mean, licensing dependent, we have an offensive coordinator. So the experience is you get a play in your ear and you run the play that the offensive coordinator calls. Right now, it's a former player named Darius Butler, and we used AI this year to do all the calls. So we didn't have to record. We used his voice. Obviously, he gave us the okay to do so. But we were able to create a whole new playbook of calls based on his voice. Now imagine in a world where you're a Taylor Swift fan, and Taylor Swift says it's okay. Well, now your coach can be Taylor Swift, or Kevin Hart, or The Rock, or Usher, whatever it is, right? What that does is it makes somebody who, you know, maybe a fan of those people and who like NFL football to lean in even more, because these worlds start to collide, and the content creates itself without a lot of the hassle to do so. So as the worlds come together and NFL fans and beyond have more and more ways to put their hands on NFL football, the pie continues to grow.
So one more thing for you here, guys. What do you think in a year? We're sitting here in 1 year. Well, not here. We'll be in New Orleans, right? So in New Orleans next year, what are we going to be saying about, you know, the world of like what has happened? What do you think has happened in a year in terms of the broadcast, the gambling, where Genius Sports come into all of it? What are we seeing in the next year?
Look, I don't think I have anything overly revolutionary to share on that. I think you'll see a lot more of the same in the things that we're doing now. You'll just see the extension of Bet Vision to the full season with more partners probably taking it and an even better product experience after another runway of developing and making that better. I think you'll see us do more all broadcasts with different type of experiences behind Toy Story of what those different experiences could look like. Maybe that's a whole separate package of rights in the future that is not even sold to our game partner. You're selling to a different partner for that type of experience. And so, you know, I don't know if we'll see anything sort of so radically different next year that's not on the horizon. Quite frankly, if it's going to hit next year, we should already be working on it. But I think you'll see a lot more of what we're doing just advanced a lot farther. And then I'm sure we'll be surprised.
So I think, again, we're in the, you know, very early stages with Bet Vision. We have a lot of room to iterate. We haven't integrated all of the functionality. I think we'll see that get a lot better. But for us, what we're going to do is try to give our customer what they want. Right? The customer always comes first for us. And so, you know, we're leaning into these game narratives. We really want sports betting to be something that enriches watching the game for fans, right? It's not something separate apart from the game, diving into the game narrative. We think there are ways, you know, whether it's all broadcast or other ways to talk, more betting content being about the game, the narratives that are driving the game, and us building markets around those narratives. I think we continue to lean into that, and the customer response so far has been great. And but we want to keep, you know, we want to meet the customer where they are. And so that I think for us will be the number one driver of innovation.
Steve, what's your crystal ball here?
I say Cincinnati for my two friends on the end, and Detroit will be New Orleans at the Super Bowl.
Love that. Cincinnati and Detroit, I'll take it. It'll be a draw between the two of us, or three of us, I guess. Okay, so I get asked this, and you know, put you on the spot. Give me your one matchup in this game that's happening on Sunday that you will be watching specifically. What is the one, like, is it Christian McCaffrey against, Steve Spagnuolo's run defense? Is it what you gotta get one. Hawk, you go first.
I'll go first. I will say what the Chiefs defense does against the two running back set for the 49ers offense and Cal Juszczyk specifically, because Spagnuolo has typically put a base defense out there against them in the past, and if so, it will create opportunities down the field in the pass game with Kyle as a tight end. If he goes, small, like 6 DBs to stop the pass, then Christian McCaffrey is going to run wild, and I think that's going to be one of the keys to the matchup. I went real deep there.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. We can handle it. What about you?
Look, I'll be a little bit more superficial. I mean, to me, as the fan watching that AFC Championship game, was a tale of two halves. And the first half, the Chiefs O-line really handled a lot of the pressure, and Patrick made plays. If you look at the second half, their O-line lost a lot of the battles. Patrick was under duress, and he put a point on. And so, if the Niners D-line, which is the strength with that linebacking crew, that defense, I think they're going to have an opportunity, especially with me out, to really put some pressure on. Now, you can run on the Chiefs a little bit, so if they stay committed to the running game, we'll see. But I think that Chiefs, offensive line with the injuries versus the D-line for the Niners, and the Niners being pretty motivated after not a great appearance against the Lions, quite frankly, and I'm not sure they played that great against the Packers. Be interesting. If the D plays like everybody believes the D is capable of playing, to me, that's going to be the major matchup.
I love it. What's your favorite?
I think I'm most interested to see what kind of game the coaches think they're in. So I was at the Ravens Chiefs game last week, and Andy Reid was going for it on the first drive on 4th down. Harbaugh went for it, I think, inside his own 30 in the early second quarter, because they knew what kind of game they were in. And now, no points in the second half, so it really tightened up. But I think both these coaches have a tendency to be okay punting, be okay taking a field goal. Both these teams kind of have long, slow drives. It's going to be interesting to me to see.
I think you just told us that the under's going to hit. I don't know that.
If I knew.
Just long, slow drives, defense, running. Sounds like it's.
They know how to score.
They also know how to score. Seriously.
Well, I'm most interested in how many cutaways CBS does to Taylor Swift.
More or less than 10. 10? If you put the number at 10.5, would you say more?
I'd take the under on that.
Under? Okay. What are you thinking?
I'll get a text from my 10 and 11-year-old daughters every time they do it, and I'm confident their number one question will be, can I see Taylor from my seat at the game on Sunday?
Well, anyways, I think that's a great place to leave it. I really appreciate time is absolutely the most important thing in this entire world. So everyone who came, thank you so much. Everyone on this panel, thank you so much for your insights, for being so smart. We all got better having been here and taking this time here in Las Vegas to do this. Thank you to Genius for absolutely everything and setting this up. And good luck for both the teams playing, right? We're going to be very equitable, and to whatever bets works best for FanDuel and for Genius, right? Yeah, good. Thank you so much. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the press conference. I hope you got out of it as much as I did. I thought it was very thorough. I thought it was very impressive to hear what they were having to say and kind of listen to the different discussions that they were having. So overall, thought it was a great experience and a good thing to listen to. So I hope you did too. Always remember, hit that subscribe button so you can see all the content that we're doing this week. And we'll see you here next time, guys. Thanks.